afternoon and welcome to our final session of our final day of June's Real Estate Live UK. Just as a bit of background, our weeks of virtual events run 3 times a year in February, June and October. So this is our second programme for 2021 and we'll be back for our next week of events in the autumn. Real Estate Live UK is brought to us by White Label, our partners and sponsors, and I'd just like to say thank you to all of them for their support this week, as well as to all the speakers that have taken part. It's been a really great week. During Real Estate Live this week, places across the UK have been showcasing investment opportunities and discussing industry-leading topics about the property sector. And you can view the full programme of sessions that have taken place on our website, realestatelive.co.uk. And obviously, although this is our last session, the full programme will be soon available for you to watch back on demand. So look out for that, and we'll be sending out details over the next few days. Before we begin the session, I'd just like to remind the audience to please feel free to use Zoom's Q&A feature to ask questions of our speakers. And we'll endeavour to cover as many as them, I'm sure, during the half an hour. And this is our final lunchtime talk, which has been a great new addition to the programme. So I'm really pleased to hand over to Laura Edgar, who's news editor at The Planner, who will be leading this discussion. So Laura, over to you.
Thank you. Hello and welcome everyone. I hope you're having a good day. Before the COVID-19 pandemic, conversations were already being had about creating healthy places and improving the sustainability of the built environment. Now, the conversation has become even more important, with the UK needing to tackle the nature and climate crises and the decline of our towns and city centres. What is the role of the planning system and planners in addressing these? How can planners ensure places are healthier and support the UK's net zero ambitions? I'm joined by Dr Wei Yang, President of the RTPI, to talk to us about these issues. And you can also have your say, so please do submit your questions as the discussion continues, and hopefully we'll have time to address them at the end. Wei, can you introduce yourself and give us a bit of background on your career and your role as President of the RTPI?
Thank you, Laura. Hi, thank you for the introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm delighted to join you at the Real Estate Live event. If I may start from introducing RTPI. RTPI is one of the largest professional planning institutes in the world. We have more than 26,000 members in over 80 countries worldwide. In terms of my role as the RTPI president, a short answer would be I represent our 26,000 members and the institute as the figurehead, and also as an ambassador of the planning profession to advocate the value of good planning. In terms of the background of my career, I had my first degree in urban planning in China. The first 3 years, I was trained as an architect. I came to England to study my master's and PhD degree in Sheffield in 1999, so I have been here for 22 years. In 2004, I started my career in the UK as an urban designer in Milton Keynes. Milton Keynes is an ideal place for a town planner to live and work. I got my first-hand experience on which part of the new town worked and which part didn't work. As an urban designer and master planner, I worked on large-scale master planning projects from initial design to implementation stage. I met many inspirational planners and designers in Milton Keynes. And also I became a trustee of Milton Keynes City Discovery Center. We hold all the archive of Milton Keynes Development Corporation from very beginning until the end. So I learned a great deal about the New Towns program. So from the New Towns, I started to trace back to the origin, the garden cities. The more I learned about garden cities, the more I thought I found a gold mine. Yes, I realized the statement about the garden cities were unrealistic and unsuccessful were absolutely untrue. More importantly, I also realized our current society, not only in the UK, but also in a global context, will benefit significantly from garden city approaches. So my dream job would be designing and implement a real garden city in the 21st century. So I founded my own practice in 2011 and started self-funded research on 21st century garden cities. In 2014, my firm became one of the finalists of the Wolfson's Economics Prize. So we introduced a financially viable model with a shared vision amongst local authorities, communities, and developers. We also use the 21st century garden city approach on large-scale master plan projects. One of our projects was commended for the RTPI International Awards for Planning Excellence. In 2019, I stood for election to be RTPI president for 2021. The reason for putting my name forward was a strong sense of urgency that we should rebuild our connection and the trust with the general public and act immediately to modernize the planning profession. So that's a brief introduction about the RTPI and myself. So I look forward to discussing with you and then to hear your questions.
Thank you, Wei. In that case, should we go straight in with how do you think garden communities, the garden communities model, can be used to shape places as we recover from COVID-19?
Yes, because I think actually when we talk about garden communities, normally people would naturally think about it's a community with lots of trees. I think that's what a lot of general public at least feel that way.
Yeah.
The essence of garden community model actually is a community shared by, it's a social community and the economic model. So actually, if we trace back at the very beginning in Ebenezer Howard's book, Tomorrow, A Peaceful Path to Rural Reform, published in 1898. So he talked about all these topics. Even I just mentioned these topics, you will see actually it's still very relevant to really how we can create a better future when we come out of COVID-19. So he talked about human nature, public health, the environment, the beauty of nature, the marriage of town and country, communities, social capital, workable neighborhoods, local jobs, advanced technologies, locally produced food, charities, social enterprise, land value capture, freedom, and cooperation. So even all these words sounds very modern to us. So if we talk about the three essential elements of garden community, is land value capture, community governance, and the long-term stewardship. So they are absolutely key principles of a garden community. So they would ensure keeping the community spirit and providing community support whenever we need it. So I think a good example is Letchworth Garden City. So during the pandemic, the Letchworth Garden City Heritage Foundation, they would have actually enough additional surplus from the land value capture they have each year to provide additional service for the community need. I think that would be an ideal model. So actually, we have this support within the community. So the local people, they do feel they are supported by where they live. So it's not only places where you live, it's really a sense of, it's like a home feeling. So,
the whole place.
Yeah, the home place, yes.
Yeah. So that model then would be something that could be used to create healthier places. They all sound like they're going to be healthier. So what's planning's role in ensuring communities do become healthier places to live and work following the pandemic?
Yes, because planning is really about health and well-being of people and our environment. And planning is people-centric. So good planning can bring the best out of people and to enjoy their lives, and at the same time contribute to our society and the economy. So after the pandemic, we need a green recovery, and also we need to hold hands to make sure actually everybody have a decent home and have a proper job to go to, and also they are being looked after. So I think actually, I think what planning can play is we can engage with communities to understand what they need, and also we can deliver human-scaled places with good access to job, education, healthcare, and open space. I think that's all we want to do.
And then you mentioned trees at the beginning. So how important are trees to creating healthy places? Of course, garden communities are not just trees, you've said that, but the government does want to make sure there are more trees about. It's on their agenda. So, how important are they, and what are the planning considerations in making existing and new communities greener and more tree friendly?
Yes, I think trees, I think there's a very interesting quote, like old Chinese saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. So it's never too late to do something. So thinking about the climate change and also the biodiversity crisis. So I think we all have to do something to enhance our environment. So planting trees will be like a starting point, although it's maybe not the only solution, but I think if everybody want to do something, that's the least thing we can do.
Yeah.
So the trees, I think the government have already saying they tree land avenues for new built, but also actually in our existing communities, already built up areas, there are lots of spaces we can plant more trees, and to make sure actually they are probably being considered in terms of the spacing, and also there is a long-term maintenance scheme to make sure they can survive for longer term, because just plant a tree is not good enough. I think that tree has to be living for more than 20 years to be carbon neutral. So actually just plant a tree and then let it die, actually is even creating more carbon footprint. So it's really, we have to think about the long term and then think about the whole picture of what we want in our community.
Yeah. So then what do you think the future of town centres will be post-COVID-19? Obviously they're declining at the minute. We're struggling with empty shop windows, and obviously the government have brought in permitted development. So what do you think is the future of the town centre post-COVID-19?
Yeah, I think at the moment we see a quite sharp decline in town centres, but I think actually this can only, I think this is maybe a temporary phenomenon, because eventually I think as human beings we're all social animals. So I think we want to be together, and we have to really think about innovative ways of really regenerate our town centers, and using the unique selling points of town centers to create more mixed-use civic hub. So I think mixed-use civic hub would be the new or the future identity of our town centers, because I think the unique selling point of our town centers is because it's workable, and also there's a wide range of services within doorstep. So it's actually, if you think about, we can create more residential opportunities for young people, young families, single person or single parent household, as well as we can create a more innovative model of healthy aging living, because we do have this we tend to have say, for example, residential homes or elderly residential kind of institute. Actually, if we break that institute model, we can create a more dispersed, healthy age living, and make sure actually this type of housing are mixed probably with all different types of properties. Actually, it's much more healthy and sustainable, and also for people living there, and they can have a much more independent life, so they can still have their normal social life. And then by integrating more future digital technologies, I think we could provide a very high quality healthcare to the future healthy aging accommodation. I think we really have to think about how to can combine this and provide this essential service for town center.
Thank you. We've had a couple of questions that have come in on that. Is there a type of residential development you're keen to see more of, or you're more excited about?
Yeah, actually, it's a very good question. I always think we haven't got enough attention in the UK to think about healthy aging living. I think I already mentioned that. For example, because we have already moved into an aging era. So I think by 2050, the UK's, I think the overall worldwide will have more than 25% of people over 60 years old. Mm-hmm. So we are already moving that era. So we cannot really put all these residential homes separately. And although I think they have their function, but I think it's much more sustainable and healthy for us to live within the neighborhood. For example, I have a good friend, she lives in Sheffield, and then they're both in their late 80s. And then their next door neighbor provide great support during COVID-19 to provide to give them to do shopping for them, or all sorts of exercise. It's not something we can rely on the local authority to provide all these care service. So we really have to rely on our neighbors and communities. So this community spirit, I think, has been reflected very strongly during the pandemic. I think that's something we should really build on further to create more of this for our future communities.
Yeah.
So I think carrying, and also if we think about the overall population, women count 50%, and children and the elderly, disabled and other disadvantaged groups. So we really have to think about how we can provide future housing for diverse need.
Yeah. So second question, it probably links to another question that we've got. Can you point to any town centres that are doing good things to remain relevant? And also, what can we learn, what can the UK learn from other countries as it looks to reshape its community spaces and town centres?
Yes, there are a lot of useful international experience we can draw from other countries. I think if I mention 3 concepts, I think will be quite useful. I think, of course, the first one is the 15 minutes neighborhood concept, as has been widely quoted. Although it became fashionable in the last 2 years, started from the mayor of Paris. But actually, I keep saying it's not something new, because if we trace back to Ebenezer Howard's concept, he mentioned the walkable neighborhoods. If you count the area, it's about 15 minutes catchment area. So I think that's a very important, concept we could really consider more, because some of our town centers really, I think maybe haven't really provided enough mixed use. So what are the new use we need to inject into the town center? And also another concept is community planners. I think that's something we could consider, because we normally don't have community planners, but with specialist community planners, they would be essential to maintain public buy-in during a period of reform. So they can really talk with the local resident to understand what they need. That would be the starting point to build a nice place, either is the town center or a residential neighborhood. And also with the support of technology, we can broaden that engagement. So you really have this, in-person communication with the local residents and understand their need is very important. And also, it's really the more flexible use of our public spaces. I think we all see actually during COVID, there are more outdoor, places has been created for hospitality. But also, we could really think about how we can green our town centers more. There's a concept called the mini forest. So we can use that concept to green our town centers and to make it more sustainable and more interesting and more welcoming to our children.
Yeah.
So this mini forest concept started from a Japanese biologist, actually back to 1970s. So he has created more than thousands of these mini forests in Southeast Asia, and now it's actually moving very fast in our other European countries. So these sites can be small as a tennis court, with a good mix of local species, actually can create a very intense biodiversity within the town center. So if with its limited space available, we could create something like that.
Yeah, that's great. By the end of this month, the government, target to achieve 78% reduction in emissions by 2035 will be enshrined in law. What support does planning provide in achieving net zero ambitions? Do you think it's an achievable time frame? What are companies setting achievable targets to get there?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think first of all, no doubt we have to act quickly, because there's no time to waste. And the next 10 years, actually now it's 9 years, is crucial to tackle climate change and biodiversity decline. So we really have to act quickly. On the other hand, we have to really take, a joined-up thinking, because at the moment, the carbon reduction are being considered on a sector-by-sector basis. But actually, I think the unique role planning can play is really we can provide a place-based system approach to consider everything all together. If I use an example, I think it's a very simple example. For example, if we have this low carbon transportation, like public transport or even electric cars, they are greener. And also we have but if we say, for example, if we can create places to live and work close to each other, so we don't have to drive a car and we can walk or cycle to our workplace, that would save lots of time and then create a much greener environment. So this place-based approach is very important to make our different mechanisms much more sustainable and also much more effective and efficient. So to create this efficient system is important. And also another important thing is whatever the policy we create, we have to really make sure they are accountable. So we really need a monitoring system to say actually whether it's worked or not. And then if it's not working, what we can do to make it better. So this monitoring process is very important. That can also rely onto the planning approach as well.
Yeah, so then that place-based approach actually brings me back to the 15-minute neighbourhood concept, that everything is all within each. What do you think are the main challenges facing the planning sector now?
Yeah, I think the main challenge facing the planning sector now is really about, I think fundamentally, it's really about the misunderstanding of the planning profession. Because I think planning profession, the spirit of the planning profession is focused, is hard on the service to a community. So I think we really don't really have a defined merit to say actually this is what we do, this is what we don't do. I think whatever concerns to the benefit of the community is within our remit. But I think there are a lot of misunderstanding about the planning. People think confused with planning with development control. So think about is really getting planning approval. But actually it's much more beyond that. I think the whole planning profession is much more visionary thinking and long-term thinking. So because of this misunderstanding, I think we have there are two constraints. One is the resource constraints. So because of the budget cut, I think we really don't have enough resource within the local planning authorities. And also because the resource cut, I think our education system has been affected as well. That really relates to the future skill development of the profession, both for our education system and also for the long-term lifelong learning training process. Because I realize lots of planners working in local planning authorities, they don't have enough training budget to do that next step. So I think the fundamental reason is because of this misunderstanding of the planning profession. Okay. So we really need to advocate more about what are the full potential of the planning profession and how we can do things differently.
Yeah, and really be proud of it.
Yeah.
The Queen's speech included a planning bill which will take forward reforms that were set out last year in the white paper Planning for the Future. What are your thoughts on these reforms and the bill?
Yeah, the planning reform, if we say from the last year, the planning white paper, the consultation received over 44,000 responses. So you can see actually there was a diverse range of views received, and then actually it raised the awareness and the importance of the planning system. But I think because we have such a wide, diverse range of views, so who should we listen to? And then ultimate, actually, trust. I think who should we listen to? So I think ultimate truths are always simple. So I think we need to ask and remind ourselves. So for whom do we plan? And what is our relationship between nature and the society? And how can we human beings survive? Because now health and well-being actually is one of the principles, but actually I think more fundamentally is in the context of climate change and the biodiversity decline, it's really how human beings we can survive. It's something really urgent. So I think actually if we think about as human beings, we have two characters. One is our human character within we live in societies, and another one is our nature connection with the natural environment. So I think the fundamental objective of the planning profession, I think we should aim to create a balanced system for people, nature, and society to coexist in harmony. So answering these questions, I think we need a reimagining of the planning system, thinking beyond the professional boundaries and beyond the present day. So the first question of the planning white paper consultation, what are the three words you associate with the planning system? I think actually, if I ask this question again, so what are 3 words I associate with the planning profession? I think these are compassion, selflessness, and creativity. So rather than focus on short-term gains and then short-term thinking, I think we should rather focus on universal common good, like zero carbon, biodiversity, social justice, and circular economy. So if you could think in a visionary and long-term view, I think we could really frame our planning reform in a much more ambitious way.
Yeah, I think that links in then to what do you see as the main opportunity for the planning sector following the pandemic? Do you think people are engaging with planning more as a result?
Yes, definitely. Yeah, as I said, since the planning white paper was published, there are so many people. They suddenly realize the importance of planning, and they want to talk with planners. They want to understand more about the planning. And what encouraged me the most was there were a lot of environmental specialists. They want to have a say, but they realize the planning system is more complicated than their their particular area of special expertise. So they approach us to say, actually, can we join you to send our proposal together, or can we have some joint approach? So I think having this joint approach is so important. So the pandemic and the consequent accelerated digitization of our lives, I think will have fundamental implications on land use and the transport planning. And also, I think because of the pandemic, there's a strong request from the public for more sustainable and integrated systems to strengthen social protection, recover from COVID-19, and to ensure digital access, good healthcare and education, as well as decent homes for all. So more people are willing to get involved in local decision making. And the RTPI conducted a research for the future of engagement. And then the response we received was more people are willing to get involved. So they want to be engaged. So in order to adapt to the post-pandemic life, so they want to be engaged in a consultation about how they can change their local places and services to fit for the need for the future for the community. Also, I think public start to see the need of long-term strategic and urban-rural integrated approach. So I think more people are moving now into rural areas. And then how about the constraints on the rural local services? So how we can enhance that? And also the digital access in these areas are something we need to consider as well urgently. So also in the context of climate change and biodiversity decline, we need to consider the whole territory as one ecological entity. I think more and more people realize the importance of connecting nature back to our cities, towns, and villages, of having this connection to nature. And also because during the pandemic, I think the planning profession responded quickly. So people realize planning is an essential public service. During lockdown, we keep things running. So I'm really proud of the planning profession. We have been doing that. So what I believe is because planning is an essential public service, so the planning service is as important as our public health service. So what we need is a long-term mechanism to value social capital in our planning system and use public money for public goods by investing in planning. As I said earlier, one of the main challenges we face today is the lack of investment in planning. So we can work with a wide range of stakeholders to set priorities to address poverty and inequality issues. So this can significantly reduce the burden on social and healthcare in medium and long term. Because through conversation with local authorities, I realized social healthcare has been something, actually it's a big burden for them. It's a very big budget and each council have to set. So if we can invest in planning, we can reduce that. We can reduce the social and healthcare bill for long term. So all in all, I think the pandemic gave the planning sector the opportunity to regain our connection with the public, and then for the planning profession to be better understood, and also reinforce the importance of the long-term strategic forward thinking.
Yeah. That's great. That's actually all we've got time for. So any questions that haven't been answered, I'm sure we can get back to you. Thank you, Wei, for your time today, and thank you to the audience for joining us.
Thank you, Laura.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Laura and Wei, for a really hopeful and forward-looking end to the week, as well as a nice link back to our Gun Communities panel yesterday. So, yeah, that was a very nice tie-in. As I mentioned at the start, this is our final event of the June Real Estate Live UK programme. So thank you again to all our partners, speakers, delegates, and everybody else for taking part. It's been a really brilliant week with a huge variety of places and topics discussed. And as I mentioned, all our sessions will be available soon to watch back on demand. And the programme will return in October. So if you'd like to speak, sponsor, watch, get involved, make sure you're signed up to our newsletter, or absolutely please get in touch with us. And we'll look forward to seeing you again in October, if not before. Thank you.